So I'm gonna talk about this whole shit without needing any PowerPoints, okay? But check this out. Viruses are responsible for the evolution of you even being here as a human, okay? There's good viruses and there's bad viruses. I'm gonna make a medical disclaimer. I'm not a medical doctor. Do your own research. None of my stuff is backed up by medical science or medical claims. And I'm only saying that to protect my video because in actuality, back in the day, people depended on high priests to tell them what is. And people believed in that. Now we depend on science. Science and spirituality should have never been separated. However, it's separated. Okay? And that's where we start to have these arguments and debates because it's separated. If it was basically united and integrated, we would have a much more understanding about how things work. The word influenza comes from the word influence of the stars. It's short for flu. The word influenza, the short word is the flu, right? And the flu is a viral or a bacterial infection. But who is to say that these infections are necessarily a bad thing, right? You come in contact with a form of pathogens, which all these viruses already exist within you, right? And there's certain things that happen, horizontal gene transfer, okay? Now, there's certain things that happen when a virus outside of you comes in contact with your body, okay? You have these viruses all existing within you. It's like a storehouse of ancient viruses that all reside within you, okay? Now you have something called developing symptoms, so you really never catch anything. What happens is that these things come in contact with you, and a virus has no life at all. It's dead, okay? A virus actually needs a host to survive and thrive. There's good viruses and bad viruses. The bad viruses are even needed. Good viruses, for example, are things that help you with the evolution of your species. Now, however, we got something called junk DNA. 2% only makes you up as a human body. Now, think about how much emphasis there is on vaccinations when you're born. See, in order for you to strive and survive in society or even participate in society, you have to get a bookload of vaccines. I'm not telling you to get vaccinated or not get vaccinated. That is on you. I'm just putting out content based on my opinions, okay? So, why? And particularly, 72 vaccines have to be put into a human little child for them to actually participate in society, like schools and different type of shit, okay? So, we are injecting ourselves with these things, which are the artificial form of a virus that's formed in a laboratory, right? To protect us from these viruses. However, if you were to develop these symptoms of a virus, right, naturally, your body builds a defense toward it, but you're still going to, I'll say fall ill for the sake of conversation, because when you're sick in bed, vomiting, diarrhea, mucus, fevers, these are actually the ultimate detox of the body. This is the ultimate gold standard in detoxification. In fact, when this is happening, it's wise to work with the body and let the fever run its course, let the vomiting and diarrhea come out, because your body's purging and expelling shit, right? When this is happening and you go to a doctor, what do they tell you? They tell you to drink plenty of fluids. But why? Because the body's drawing water from the body to expel all this waste. It's purging the shit that doesn't belong in there. But somehow the body's smart enough to protect the good bacteria in the body, right? But when you go to a doctor, they give you antibiotics, which is kind of like a nuclear bomb. It kills good and bad guys. So it leaves you kind of vulnerable and open for other things, right? So it's kind of like an interest for a profit. It keeps you always in a state where you're going to need something else or come back for more, right? It's part of like how marketing kind of works, right? And they convince you to think you need these things when you really don't need them, okay? But again, do your research. I'm only giving you my opinions, okay? But your body is perfect in every way, okay? We get in the way of the body. Nature balances itself, and your body is nature. And basically, these little things occur. It all starts from a mind virus first to begin with. It starts from a mind virus. If you're told about these diseases, You create kind of like these golems or deities called diabetes, cancer, or whatnot. But it is all rooted out of the cause of one thing, and that's stagnation to some extent in the body. The body not being able to eliminate waste properly because of an imbalance of chemistry that you introduce to the body. This could happen even with information. You may hear some corrupt information, which I just said, a mind virus, that you're told about these things. You form a belief system, which is what you're holding on to, a belief system, and it starts to shape and mold your reality. Now, the way you change paradigms in life is letting a belief system go. And then you replace it with something else, or you just become fluid and you go through life, right, in a totally different experience now. But you hold on to a belief system, and your perception and perspective about life will show you what you're holding on to. So the world's going to show you what you are, not how the world is, it's how you are, right? So what you eat may cause some type of imbalance in the body, right? And it will show you what is going on inside of you, right? In the form of a dis-ease, which is nothing but a symptom. All these diseases are called symptoms, right? So you go to a doctor, you tell them what your symptoms are, and they're a service to you because they're giving you a drug to suppress that symptom because you went in for that symptom, but they never really addressed the root cause of this shit. You get what I'm saying? Sometimes people have depression, anxiety, and whatnot. There's a root cause to it, right? And you depend on people outside of you to tell you what's wrong with you when you should know yourself better than they know you. But what do? You take a drug to mask these symptoms. When you're on a diet, veganism, carnivorism, you're catering to some form of addiction to humanity. You fall in love with humanity and you become attached to it so much so that you maybe even keep on reincarnating into this bitch. Okay? Now, there's a difference between falling in love with yourself to say, I love myself, but you love yourself unconditionally. There's even concepts of saying love, if it's meant to be, well, you let it go, and if it's meant to be, it'll come back to you, right? But it'll come back to you in a evolved form, in an evolved way. It's not going to come to you in the same exact way, because everything in the universe changes, but it could change for the worse or it could change for the better, right? So love, you let it go. If it's meant to be, it'll come back. But why is this saying so important? Love is a detaching process. When you die, it's also a loving process. It's a detach, right? And you're unconditionally doing that in a way where you're not expecting anything in return. When you give from the heart, you don't expect nothing in return, right? You give from the heart space. When you are loving conditionally, you have expectations of giving something back in return, and that's actually selling something because you're expecting a return. If I give you something, you're giving me money back to some extent. I need to have some type of financial gain back, right? But there's higher evolved ways of receiving something, right? Something you get in return may be for your betterment, but again, if your world is you inverted inside out and you love yourself so much that you are catering to the trillions of sentient cells, this is kind of like me being in Christ consciousness to say that I can say I'm dying for my sins. I'm detaching from all this shit. The things that I even say I'm in love with my body, right? Because I look good, or I love my material gains, but I'm willing to let it go, right? It's a detaching process. It's a loving process, right? When I do good for myself, it's kind of like saying it's self-centered and selfish. Self-centered and selfish may seem like a bad thing, but it's really not. If I'm selfish, I can look at it from two ways. I can look at it from me being only self-servient, or I can look at it from the way of me saying I'm selfish, meaning I take care of myself. I put my oxygen mask on first so I can help others. Because how can I put oxygen mask on others and then I'm running out of air? I'm not a service to nobody like that. How can I give to the poor by being one of them, right? So I can't give to the poor by being one of them. I have to be abundant for me to be able to help other people, right? So this is where I was talking about when it comes down to being self-centered as well. If I'm self-centered, that means I'm centered in myself. I am calm in the eye of the hurricane while everything is chaotic. I am in the calm state, right? But that can be looked at in two ways. I can also say, well, I'm in a calm state, but I need everything outside of me to be calm for me to stay focused and meditate. Or you could be a master and stay in that center and still say, I'm able to meditate still, because that's how strong my focus is, which is actually a muscle. Focus exercises are meditative practices. Breathing exercises, how much oxygen can you hold in? It's like if you go underwater, how long can you hold your breath for? This determines the health of your adrenal glands and your nervous system and whatnot, is how long you can hold your breath in, but how long can you exhale and hold that exhale out too for? Like, fully release, but also see how long you could hold that state for. That's even harder than holding your inhale. That would determine how strong your autonomic nervous system, central nervous system, and your adrenal glands are. Because don't forget, you're eliminating waste through breathing. 70% at that is what you're releasing through just breathing alone. So what I was talking about in my past video, when it came down to breatharianism, you should be getting energy and nutrients from the air, so much so that you wouldn't even want to eat, right? But then we're in the illusion of you have to look a certain way. Part of the fitness industry, for you to fit in, you have to look a certain way. So you got to be big, brolic, and muscular, all bloated and shit, right? Because that's what society deems a healthy individual to be, right? But I can also mold my body with my own mind as well. If I believe that being breatharians are only skinny, then I may manifest that in my reality as well. If I believe that being a carnivore is the only way to build muscle, well, I'm going to build muscle, but we're going to talk about the evolution part in a second, right? Think about this. If everything is information and part of the viral kingdom is responsible for the evolution of your species, when I grow fruits in my garden and I use no insecticide, no pesticides, not even chemical fertilizers that I would buy from Lowe's or Walmart. Let's say I make my own compost and I'm conditioning the soil in the most organic way possible. And even the foods that we put in there, don't forget, even if we can say, you know, certain fruits were genetically modified and whatnot, once it's put in the soil, it is purified by the earth. And when it becomes that black gold, that's its pure essence. Terra materia. Even the type of soil you may find in the Amazon jungles, right? The black gold. That's pure nutrients. And when it's not just pure, I'm talking about pure in energy and essence in and of itself. It's been processed by the earth. So whatever karma or negative chemistries have been in that actual food is purified. The earth took that and transmuted it. You have now the pure gold in physical form that you use for your plants. The plants now are able to use that pure energy, that pure energy, right? Information, and in kind, the sun in its purest form feeds that tree or plant from up above, brings that nutrient and energy down to the soil system, which is called the mycelium network, and in kind, that mycelium network feeds the tree from underneath. I am now getting a balanced chemistry, and in its purest form, I'm not inserting no chemicals into it. I eat that fruit, right? It's involved with bacteria and viruses in the environment, because again, influence of the stars is where we get the word influenza. These viral kingdom are interacting with that without me having to wash my fruit. I'm intaking something called B12, especially when it's grown on the ground as well, and I'm eating that. That is an introduction of some type of virus into my system that's helping with the evolution of my species, that's evolving the quality of my consciousness. Okay? Because it's equality. I am one with with nature. Equality raises the quality of my consciousness. Okay? When I'm eating foods that are boxed in supermarkets and whatnot, that's coming from laboratories. There is no life force in that, right? See, these animals in nature, sometimes they hunt these animals, but they're alive. And when it's dead, they won't eat it. But there's always a place for those type of animals, like crows and vultures will eat dead flesh, right? But crows and vultures are also used in black magic, right? Like I said, out of darkness comes light. So who gives the life and who gives the light and things and meaning to things, right? We'll make that for another video. But we got certain animals that eat the animal intact. Even these carnivorous insects will eat these vegan insects when they're intact. For example, praying mantises that I had in my garden won't eat a dead insect, but they hunt the animal because they're taking something called the life force from that animal. Us being a higher evolved species, we should be able to extract life force, which is called prana or chi, from the environment, and we wouldn't even need to eat food. However, right, the same way you structure the microbiome in your body based on what you're eating, you are also structuring your body a certain way based on the fact that you are eating. So notice when you eat less, you tend to eat less and you tend to crave less foods, but you're also a lot clearer in mentality, because the fuller your gut is, the more your mental state tends to chatter in the upper realms, because don't forget, your stomach is connected to your brain. That's why you've always heard when you were younger, oh, eat slower, so that the brain has a chance to know that the stomach is full. That's because there's a connection between your stomach and your brain up above, and the brain is the first stomach. Notice when you have a lot of clutter in your mind, you basically don't even want to hear people. Be like, I don't want to hear any, I just need to fucking chill out. I got too much on my mind. What does that mean? You need to process and eliminate what's on your mind. Sometimes we do that through sleeping or either meditating, or just not consume information. Just listen to some relaxing music and process and let that all go, so you can actually feel refreshed again, right? So fasting is the same way. Your gut is clear and you actually have a clearer intuition, clearer discernment, right? There's a bunch of neurons in your stomach. And don't forget, your umbilical cord on an etheric level is connected to the etheric realm. You can see this when you go out of body, right? So now you start to say, well, where is this life force coming from, right? What am I really attached to? When you're in your mom's womb, you're attached to the umbilical cord in the womb, right? And this is where you're getting all your nutrients, through the umbilical cord. Now, here in human form, you're eating, right? But there's spiritual essence that comes through that umbilical cord. So try to meditate on your umbilical cord, and you'll start to see what I'm talking about when it comes even to the pulsation that you'll start to feel in that area, and how that even impacts your energetic body as well. So there is no right and wrong here. It's just it's how you're doing it. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not a vegan. However, people who don't eat meat, I find that to be a beautiful thing. I really do. But especially if you're not eating meat because you realize that these are your brothers and sisters, so you genuinely, spiritually know not to eat these animals. Okay? So if I'm doing it for egotistical purposes, or because my ego fell in love with a philosophy, then it's not to say that's right and wrong, but there's a consciousness to this and a quality of consciousness. So now, if I, for example, eat, let's say, something that's grown on the ground, like beets or tubers and whatnot, I am intaking something called B12, and it's that there's life to it's a bacteria. But what's determining the thriving of that bacteria in my system is something called the intrinsic factor, the environment. If my environment is fucked up, you got to look at your body like a petri dish of bacteria. You notice how when you try to even grow kefir, you can't use metal spoons, you can't use faucet water or mineral water. You have to actually use distilled water, right? And you're only giving it sugar. And when you drink this water kefir or whatever kefirs you're growing, notice that when the kefir or the bacteria, you're not drinking sugar, because the sugar is the food for the bacteria. When you drink that water, it no longer even tastes sweet, right? It tastes like and kombucha shit too, but when you drink it, you'll see that you're actually drinking something that's fermented, but it's not even sweet anymore because the sugars were consumed by that bacteria. But you're intaking now the beneficial stuff that can thrive in your system. So it's the same way with your body. Your body runs on sugar, right? But bacteria is what's actually intaking the sugar. But there's good bacteria, bad bacteria. You can intake fructose from fruit, which is non-addictive, or you can have high fructose corn syrup, which is highly addictive. Food and Drug Administration is in the same category for this reason. You can have crack cocaine, which has the same addictive properties. It has the same effect on your brain as fucking sugar does, right? Like, I'm talking about high fructose corn syrup and shit. But now, being a service to people is neutral. So like I was saying before, which I may not have covered my point, if somebody has withdrawal symptoms, you may appear to look ill to me. If I'm a crack dealer and you're a crackhead and I have crack, I'm gonna give you crack. You give me money. Now I alleviated your symptoms and I was just a service to you. But it didn't cure your addiction to crack. You just got a fix. That's it. So it's the same thing when it comes down to when medical doctors give you a prescription for symptoms, because people are on the same fucking medication for 9 years, and supposedly medicine's supposed to cure you, isn't it? But it's not curing you, it's just suppressing or treating a symptom. You know what I'm saying? So now, when we talk about viruses and whatnot, let's talk about the 72 vaccines. How do you know that you are not meant to have contact with these viruses upon being born? Which I want to make another video even on like natural birth to C-sections, okay? But being blocked from these viruses could be detrimental to the evolution of your species. And it's not to say that you're being more evolved human. I'm talking about fully turning on this body to the point where you say, I completed this game, now I can grow into something else. It's kind of like a caterpillar. It's not going to just become a butterfly until it's fully gone through its stages to be a butterfly, right? It just doesn't come out halfway. It has to fully develop in the cocoon or in that state to become a butterfly. So how do you know that this process is not continually interrupted every time we put some type of intervention in there? But also divine intervention can be you talking to your cells. You could be so sick or appear to be sick, in fact, which are nothing but healing symptoms. And I'm gonna have to probably do another video to cover more points because this video is gonna cut off. But you can actually, no different than war generals in war back in the day, where they said they were spoken to by God and told when to go to war, when to do things, and